right. You don't even realise we're doing it. It's like, go back to the days of. It's like going back to the days of the caveman days. You got two cavemen going into the savannah, and they come across a saber-toothed tiger. One of them gets eating. The next time the other one goes up and sees a saber-toothed tiger, is he actually going to sort of say, "Oh, do you know what? Not every saber-toothed tiger is the same, and let me give this one an opportunity." No, the first reaction, because their experience, because that's part of their deep memory, which is in the hippocampus now, and that's actually telling them, actually, danger, danger, danger. All right, so that's an issue. But going back to Israel, so they've got this country where they've now got their own identity. All right, so if anyone wants to actually go there, they can actually feel safe, because otherwise they were never safe before anyway.
Don't forget, Muslims allow people into their ranks exceptionally easily, whereas the Jews do not.
No, they do not. No. You have to convert to Judaism if you marry. I mean, I think Ivanka Trump had to.
An enormous amount of learning is required.
Ivanka Trump had to go to
whereas
Judaism.
The Muslims, they assume everyone is born Muslim.
That's right.
That? And so Christians are not really Christians; they're Muslims who decide to become Christians. This is their theory. So that if you ask to become Muslim, you're actually reverting to Muslim.
Yeah, you said that. So if Iran does go for someone like Israel, I've got to say I think they need to think very carefully, because they're not going to give up. They're not going to give up in a hurry, and they've actually proven what they're prepared, the extremes they are going to go to actually preserve that level of their identity, because they've got nothing else. And you shouldn't screw with anybody. You shouldn't screw with anybody in some ways who's got nothing else left to lose.
And that's an interesting point, because that's a commonality between Israel and China. Because the Chinese, the key feature of the Chinese is that they have guarded their culture and identity over the millennia. And this is why the Chinese actually trust the government, because they know the government is going to always guard their culture and identity. And the Jews do the same thing. And instead of criticizing and attacking the Jews, why don't we look at why they're successful? It's because they support each other, because they follow their structure and their religion and their culture. And if you go to the temple, you can get to meet people and get support and advice.
I think I'd probably be interested in how far this goes back. I think we wonder how far this goes back as to why Europeans seem to be more susceptible to actually having their own identity and their own culture being diluted, because a lot of countries should hold on to their own, and I think they should. If I want to go to Africa, I want to actually experience their culture, their food, their way of life.
Capitalism.
When in Rome you do as the Romans do.
Capitalism is the reason why. Well, because everyone had their identity until the Industrial Revolution.
Well, in some ways, actually, this is what Hitler looked to create. He created, it was national socialism, but he was nationalistic, and the thing is, same with Stalin. He was a nationalist. And actually, so was Gandhi. So was Nelson Mandela. People seem to think about all these people. These were all nationalists. They all wanted to conserve their identity. He wanted to conserve the Indian and Pakistani and Bangladeshi identity. Yeah, we're almost like the Europeans are so easy to hand it over. And if I think about where it goes back, does it go back to guilt over colonization of these other countries, even though it was due at that point in time, and there's a level of privilege and guilt that they actually having to deal with?
No, zero. It's purely capitalism, because capitalism, materialism, instant gratification, self-obsession.
But why Europe? Why doesn't it happen in other countries?
Because that's where the Industrial Revolution started, and
okay, you may have a point.
The more countries become westernized, then the quicker they fall apart, and that is a danger for China as well, actually. And in fact, it's already happening. As we said, China is beginning to fall apart, and to maintain its economy, it's having to outsource to Vietnam, to Africa, and it's turning those places into its own sweatshop.
Well, there was something happening today, actually. I think the US government has fined some Chinese China over some certain fraud or banking fraud issues or whatever, even today. So their relations are not getting any better. But the thing is, look, I think if the American politicians are really, really clever, I think they would, I'd almost let Trump deal with all the dirt, because he's quite happy to go into the trenches and actually fight it out, because he's a counterpuncher, and let them get all the things that they're not willing to do. And when he goes, blame him for everything. But then again, they don't change anything. And I don't think that, and I think if they were smart, all he's doing is cleaning house ruthlessly. He's decluttering. What he's doing, he's decluttering everything. He's decluttering all the mess. He's decluttering everything. And the thing is, he'll probably leave them in a better place. But when the other politicians come in, they don't actually have to revert back to the old ways.
No, they don't.
Because Trump's done all the dirty work for them. That's fact.
Right. Well, he's been their blunt instrument, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I think, in some ways, I think I'd give him a little bit of autonomy to be able to do that. Build a wall.
Well, see, democracy doesn't allow for anything to get done, does it? I mean, look at poor old Theresa May. Apparently, if she doesn't get her Plan B through, then there's going to be the Labour politicians' plan, which shall actually give the House power to veto anything the Prime Minister says and force her to delay Brexit.
Oh, look, there's going to be a no deal exit. Actually, I think it's pretty clear. It's not recoverable. Any little thing that's going to be changed. The thing is that Europe have accepted it. Do you think they're really going to manoeuvre so much to actually make sure that they actually get a Brexit out of it? That's going to be a no-deal Brexit out of it. We're either going to go back into Europe with a more improved deal in terms of immigration and the free movement of people, which is what you're talking about, from non-EU countries, which is actually all the UK really wanted right at the beginning.
Yeah, but the trouble is, Europe is a deeply corrupt and failed institution.
Well, the thing is, it's run by socialists. I mean, look what's happening. All these right-wing parties, extreme right-wing parties, are getting in, which should never happen. Any form of extremism from either side is really bad. Yeah, but on that note, it's
there's a lot of insecurity, isn't there? We talked about Venezuela, we talked about the US, we talked about Iran and Israel, we talked about the chaos in Brexit. There's a lot of insecurity, isn't there?
A lot of insecurity. Well, there's a lot of uncertainty. It's uncertainty.
And yet I'm sure that the real powers that be know exactly where we're heading.
You mean the Rockefellers?
I don't know. That's a conspiracy.
Yeah, the Rockefellers.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll speak to you next week. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.